Hello and welcome to Murphy's Garden, and this is just a quick video because as you can see it's raining. I know most of the rest of the world seems to be basking in a heat wave. It's absolutely boiling everywhere else, but we here in Britain didn't get the memo, and it seems to just rain every day and it's not particularly warm at the moment. But I just popped out to bring Alistair a cup of tea because he's busy outside in the garden cutting this yew hedge. We've just kind of got used to the rain and we just have to carry on regardless. And in fact, sometimes it's quite good there's a few jobs you can do, which is quite good to do in the rain, like mulching and things like that. So back to the yew hedge. The yew hedge, we planted this, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. I will post footage of us planting it when that was. And yew has a reputation for being very slow growing, and as I've said many times in the past, it isn't slow growing. As long as you don't cut the main stem, it will grow quite quickly, and it has grown quickly. But last year all we did was just simply to top the hedge and just just keep it at the height it was. But what we want to do this year, because what we're finding is some very gnarly thick wooden branches and the trunk in the middle of each of them, and they're very hard to cut through. Alistair can't just run along this hedge with his chainsaw. He's hitting these big big trunks. And then the other thing that's happening is we're getting a lot of very long whippy growth. So what happens is that instead of having this nice, you know how you can get that nice kind of fluffy appearance on the side of a yew hedge, when it's all new growth, it's lovely, but we're getting these very long branches that just don't really look right. So we're cutting these out, and we want to take it back in a bit tighter than perhaps we really want it, and bring the height down lower than perhaps we want it in the longer term. So we've been quite drastic, or he's been quite drastic, but it will hopefully be good in the longer term. It's just some work that we need to do just to get that maturity, and then obviously for maintenance in the future it will make things a lot quicker and a lot easier to maintain. And we don't want these hedges too high because it will just make the garden look a bit too dark, and particularly the parterre, it makes it more bright when the hedges are a bit lower. So that's where he's at. I'm inside doing some much needed housework, and I better go back in before I get soaked, but I just wanted to do this little update. Now I'll just show you what I mean. This is a really good example. Alistair hasn't cut this yet, but you can see these branches. So on first appearance, the hedge is, it's all in a line. I think actually maybe you did give it a light prune. So you can see from here, it's got a nice straight edge. But when you look in a bit closer, you realise that some of these branches are very long and not very desirable. We're not going to get much growth coming out here. So what we have to do is take out some of these branches, take them a bit lower down. We want to encourage growth to come outwards, not these great big long ugly lateral branches. So we're doing a bit of restorative work on this hedge, and you can take that, because if you have, even this is quite a new hedge, but if you have got an old hedge, it's perfectly possible to renovate an old hedge by cutting it back quite hard. It will regenerate from old growth, which is one of the fantastic things about yew. And cutting hedges is a big job, and if it's something you really need to have the right equipment to do the job properly, and if it's something that you struggle with, it really is worth getting a professional in to do the job well. Al's got all the equipment, and we've got a lot of really good ladders, and this is a kind of platform ladder, which is really good for the job, and he's got this long reach hedge cutter as well, so he's got all the gear, and it just makes the job safer and easier, and he wears all the appropriate safety equipment as well. So get someone in if it's a bit too much.
Taxus baccata, AGM, also known as English yew or European yew, is an evergreen tree native to Europe and Western Asia. It is a popular ornamental tree that is widely cultivated in gardens and parks around the world, and provides excellent evergreen structure in the winter garden. The English yew is a slow-growing tree that can reach heights of up to 40 feet and has a narrow pyramidal shape. It has dark green, glossy, needle-like leaves and small red berries that are toxic to humans and most animals. Despite its toxic berries, the English yew is often used in landscaping and as a hedge plant due to its ability to tolerate shearing and pruning. Taxus baccata is best used in a garden setting to create topiary shapes and hedging, and can be pruned into all sorts of topiary shapes. If you want your yew to look tall and slim, then go for Taxus baccata fastigiata or Irish yew, which will form this large column of green which can be used to punctuate the area. Yew is a long-lived plant and is resistant to pests and diseases. It provides excellent shelter and food for wildlife, and it grows incredibly quickly when you're growing it to the desired height, but once you cut the main stem, then it becomes a slow-growing hedge, so it's actually ideal because it's quite low maintenance in the long run. Yew will grow higher than 12 metres or 39 feet and wider than 8 metres 26 feet in 20 to 50 years if not cut, but it can be pruned to a desirable size and shape. Yew grows best in well-draining soil in full sun or partial shade. It can grow in any soil type, sand, loam, chalk or clay, but the soil must be free draining, so add grit if planting in clay. It grows in any aspect, north, south, east or west, and can tolerate exposed or sheltered sites. Prune in late winter or early spring to maintain shape and encourage new growth. Hardiness H4, USDA hardiness 7 through 10.
So I'm just reviewing all the work that Al did yesterday, and there's a lot of picking up to do, but I think it will look better for it. I know it might not look great initially, but we sort of had to do it to get that. We want to get that nice, fluffy, lovely, feathery growth that you get on a really lovely cut yew hedge. It feels very tactile and soft to touch, so that's the look we're going for. And while I'm here next to this other yew, this is yew, Taxus baccata fastigiate. So this is an upright growing yew as opposed to the hedging, which was on this side. The hedging grows outwards, so that means it's very good for all types of topiary and hedging. But if you want to sort of punctuate, you know how we talked about having punctuations throughout your garden, if you want to create that look, then go, and you want to sort of upright, something tall, then go for this. This is Taxus baccata fastigiate, so it has that upright form. And incidentally, I'm from Northern Ireland, and we visited Northern Ireland last year, and I'm from Bangor, but we went to County Fermanagh in Northern Ireland and went to a National Trust property called Florence Court. And Florence Court is home to the very original Irish yew. For anyone out there who's got an Irish yew, this is its grandparent. It's descended from this original tree. So we'll go over to have a look at some of that footage from last year. In the grounds of Florence Court, and behind me you can just see the Irish yew tree behind me. So this is of great interest because this is the mother of all Irish yew trees, and Irish yews are typical in that they're quite columnar in habit, so they grow upright rather than splay outwards, and this is the original that all other Irish yews come from, so that's why this area is of great interest. So as I say, the Irish yew tree differs from the common English yew, Taxus baccata, in that it has these upright branches, and a chap called George Willis, very near here, noticed these small little saplings which seemed to display this characteristic in that they were very upright. He gave one to the Earl of Enniskillen, who planted it here on his grounds. The other one that he planted in his own garden I think died, but this one survived, and this is the original Irish yew tree. So this was about 1740 to 1760, and cuttings were then taken from this tree and propagated from about 1780, though it was not widely available until 1820. This parent tree is female, and though male trees have occurred, the resulting seedlings do not usually show the fastigiate form. Thus propagation has been entirely from cuttings, and all Irish yews commonly seen in estates and churchyards in Britain have come from this tree, or descendants of this tree. This tree, the mother tree, has grown more open and less columnar than it would be typically because of the enormous amount of cuttings that have been taken from it, and also from the surrounding shade of the trees around it. I'm now back with my Taxus baccata fastigiate, and every time I look at it now I'm reminded of our trip to Florence Court. So one of the things I just want to talk about with this is just some of the care of these trees, because when you see a very mature tree like that one is obviously hundreds of years old, but when they get big they can get very weighty and very heavy, and if you're quite keen to keep them in this cumular appearance, then it's a good idea just to tie in the branches. And when we went to RHS Bridgewater just a few weeks ago, we saw a very mature Irish yew, and it had strapping around it which was performing this function on this big mature tree. With these, as they're immature trees, they're still quite young, what I do is just tie in the branches, and you only have to use string because it's not heavy, it's not It's not weighty at this stage in its life. So I just go along every so often and just put in some string and pull it fairly tight, not too tight, but that means then all the branches are encouraged to grow upwards, and we will get to a point with this tree, it's now about, what would you say, about sort of 6, 7, 8 foot tall, and we will get to a point where we want to stop its growth. We don't want it to get any higher. I think we'll let it go a little bit more, because we don't want, this is quite a restricted area, we don't want to get in really wide and too domineering, so we'll try and keep it under control. But yeah, just put the string lines in, put in the string early on in its life, and keep it looking good and hold it all together. Try and use green string if you possibly can, because then you can't see it. And in fact, this one I've just done, so it looks quite visible, but when I take you over to the other ones, you can barely see the string, so the branches just grow through it and you don't even notice it. So this is the one I've just done. You can just see the string if you look closely, but it's not very visible. And I'll take you over to, this is one I haven't done, so I just like to review them every year just to see how they're doing. So yeah, look, there's the string there, so you can, it's barely visible. I think that's a bit of string from a previous year that's just starting to rot. But yeah, I will just see there's one there. So I will just do, like, this branch here is getting a bit you know, loose, and here as well. So this is, you can see, look at all the new growth from this year. It's put on loads of growth. So I'll just tie in the other trees, and then I will begin my clear up. It's a big job. And it is a case of having the right equipment, and these little grabbers are just brilliant, and Al's got a lot of really good equipment. I did do a video last year about cutting hedges, so I'm not going to go through it all again, but if you want to have a look at that, I'll put the name of the video. This is Wolfgarten little light rake, so it's just, you can go really quickly around and just rake up all the wee bits, and then this is used to scoop it up. You can pick up far more with this than you ever can by hand. And while I clear away, I'll just tell you some interesting facts about yew. It is often found growing in graveyards around the UK, including at our local church. The reasons for this are numerous and interesting. Yew has been associated with death and the journey of the soul from this life to the next life for thousands of years, and was thought to purify the dead. Celtic druids saw it as sacred and planted it close to their temples to use in death rituals. Being a symbol of death but very much alive, yew came to represent eternity and the tree of life, which feature in many religious beliefs. This powerful symbolism led kings and queens to use yew in their staffs and other regalia, keen to link themselves to longevity and God-given power. Christians viewed yew as holy, as the heart of the tree is red but the sap is white. These colours symbolise the blood and body of Christ. As a hardy evergreen tree able to survive on infertile soil, the yew came to represent rebirth and resurrection. There are practical reasons too for planting yews near dead bodies. The poisonous taxines they produce could kill cattle that graze on them, preserving the ground and therefore the bodies beneath. The reason they are in so many of our churchyards is simply that they never left. Churchyards also have very little competition from other trees compared to a woodland. They have excellent survival skills and can live for hundreds of years. They send out shoots of fresh growth and can regenerate from old wood, and they can put down a shoot into the ground which can embed itself and grow into a new plant. Yew has dark green, glossy, needle-like leaves and small red berries. The entire yew hedge or tree is poisonous and toxic to humans and most animals, but it is the berries, and more specifically the seeds of the plant, which are recorded to contain the highest concentration levels of taxine. Although yew is known to be toxic, it was found to be effective in developing chemotherapy drugs. Taxol, coming from the bark of a Pacific yew tree, and Taxuter from the needles of European yew. Some UK firms used to collect the clippings from large estates in drug production, but now both drugs are created synthetically. So I'm just by this yew hedge, and this is a great opportunity to show you my new secateurs, and this is by a company called Jardin de France. Can you see? And this was the two rather handsome Frenchmen that had a stand at the Tatton Park Flower Show. I had no intention of buying any secateurs, but they talked me into it. However, it's a good purchase. Okay, can you see? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut it back here because I'm finding this is like really gnarly. Can you see it's really gnarly here? So we want the growth to come outwards and to be nice, not this gnarly bit here. So simply put it on the, and there's lots of nice green growth coming out of this anyway. So I'm going to go in here, and instead of trying hard with the secateurs to cut it, this is ratcheted, so it's simply, and the men advise me that you should do it in French, so un, deux, trois, actually don't even get to one. But look, it just comes out so easily. And that will then, the growth can come out of here. I've got another one, a big horrible one up here that I saw, this one. So this is very, can you see? See, if I tip, you can see what it would look like without it there. This is nicer growth here. If anyone's got any comments, whether we're doing this right or not, I don't know. But if anyone's got any experience of this, let us know. Let me just go down a bit lower so you can see. This is a bit thicker, so it might be a bit harder to get through. So here goes. Un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq, six. Oh God, it's not any. Didn't even get to 6, but it just comes out so easily, and you can see with that branch gone, it has no detrimental effect on the hedge whatsoever, and we'll get this nice growth coming out of here, and I think that will fill in quite nicely. So yeah, and this is okay because this is some forward facing ones here, so that's okay. So yeah, I think that's quite good. But to go through, I'll just show you close up because perhaps you didn't see. I'll do it again. So it locks on. It's just so easy. See? And they did bigger ones, and they were going through like kind of massive big trunks. I think Al's got some ones for bigger branches, but what I like about these, I can just have them. I've got them in my pocket. I've got my Felcos there, and then I have these also in my pocket. So they're just handy. See? So easy. So a good buy. All tidy again. Oh, missed that bit. And look at this adorable little chap who nearly made me jump out my skin. He was hiding under the tarpaulin. Oh, isn't he cute? Hello. Go on then. Where do you want to sit? You sit over here while I do this part. Yeah, you sit there. Good boy, you sit there, that's a good boy. So now I've got to pick all this up. And this is kind of the hardest bit because it has got a habit of going on the path. Actually, it's not too bad really, but you just have to get in here and do this by hand really, there's no other way. And then I think what I'll do is mulch all these areas around the Nepeta once I've done it, because I've got lots of bark chippings. Although known to be poisonous, having yew in a garden with children for me wasn't a big issue. When the kids were small, they weren't outside on their own, and by the time they were old enough to play outside by themselves, they were told not to eat any plants that weren't in the vegetable patch, as many in the garden are poisonous. I love the dense hedge it creates, and it zones our garden very nicely. I think it is best used in conjunction with other types of hedging. If using yew exclusively, I think the garden could look quite dark, but by contrasting it with other shades of green, it looks much better. Yew, like any hedge or tree, is best planted in the autumn, winter or early spring, but not into frozen ground. This ensures that the roots don't dry out while it establishes. The addition of mycorrhizal fungi further increases the rate of success and the ability to establish quickly.
I planted all our yew hedge into landscaping fabric, and that helps suppress the weeds and stops any competition. However, if you plant it directly into the ground, just mulch the area well with bark chippings, and that, as well as suppressing the weeds, will lock in moisture as well. And just remember to keep the hedge well watered if we get dry weather for the first year. After that, it's fine, left to its own devices. And that part of the hedge was planted just 2 years ago, and look at it today, just 2 years on, how big it's got, and we're getting that nice sort of zoned feeling in the seating area already. And the yew next to it was planted in 2013, so you can just see by contrast the difference. Although this reached its height in about 8 years, so in 8 years you've got a nice substantial hedge.
And what I've just done here, I've picked up all the hedging and I thought I'll use it as an opportunity just to mulch this area. I have had to cut back on the peter. Didn't really want to because it was just about to come back into flower, but it got completely buried by all the hedge clippings. This side it is actually back in flower, so it's a bit of a shame, but we'll set it back. But hopefully it will come back again a little bit later, perhaps next month. But it looks nice just mulching the area. Mulching is a really good thing to do under hedges. This yew has actually got plastic fabric underneath it to stop the weeds. You know, in the early stages when we planted it, it really prevents the weeds coming through, and it is still under there. So we don't really mulch right under this hedge. In fact, you don't get any weeds now. Once it's established, you don't get any weeds. But for newly planted hedges, things like our beech hedging, it's not newly planted, it's been in a few years, but we get an awful lot of weeds under it. So I have taken the opportunity, particularly because it's been very wet here in the UK, just to really thoroughly weed it and then to mulch the area really, really well with a very thick layer of bark chippings. So that's a few more little jobs ticked off. The hedges are cut, and you'll notice this yew hedge, we've left these these kind of square areas, because what we plan to do is perhaps try and make a kind of ball out of chicken wire, and then we can cut it into a nice ball, cut round it to make sure it's even on both sides, and that again just frames that view going into the parterre. So hopefully that's everything you wanted to know about yew, and perhaps some things you didn't want to know about yew, but it is a really useful and versatile plant for hedging and topiary and all the things that we've mentioned. So if you like what we do, don't forget to like and subscribe, and join us in the next videos, because we've got lots to do, lots of work in the autumn, big redesigns of different areas. So thanks for watching, and join us again in the next video. Bye for now.